Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hustle Culture Podcast. As usual, I've got my co-host, Carlos Gil. I call him Los. You all call him Mr. Gil. He's here today calling me from a hotel in LA, and I'm in New York City, and our guest is in the United Kingdom. Today, we will be talking to Bhavani Esapathi, who's an amazing entrepreneur, and also she's got a great story. But before we get into that, I would love Mr. Los himself to tell us what has been going on and just introduce himself.
What is happening, hustlers? Thank you for watching us here on Blab. For those of you that are watching us, you can see that I'm not in my usual digs. I'm here, as Tayo knows, at a hotel room in Southern California, getting ready to take my family after the show to Disneyland. And some of you are probably wondering, what's this guy doing on Blab when he should be with his family going out? But you know what? Hustle never sleeps. So when we decided to launch the show, we made a commitment. We're going to go on Saturday mornings. So boom, here I am in the seat. Looking forward to chatting with our guest, Bhavani, today. She's a great mission, great cause, and we are so excited to have her. And for those of you listening to us on iTunes, welcome to another episode of Hustle Culture.
Absolutely. And Bhavani and everyone just tuning in for now, we usually start with weekly grind. So we talk about how we hustled during the week. I know you've got a great story, Bhavani, and we'll get into that. But that's what we do. That's what we do. We try to get the audience and ingratiate them to let us know really what we've done in terms of hustle. We stay true to the name of the show, and whether it's success or whether it's failures, we just want to be as real and authentic as possible. So we do that. I'll go ahead and kick us off, and then I'll pass it on to you, like Steph Curry does, Bhavani. But I'll pass it on to you. But for me this week, it's been crazy. I literally not slept much. I think I can count the amount of hours I've slept. So it's been a lot of staying up to 4 a.m., waking up at 7. But it's because, like, as I said in the last episode, I'm working on launching a network of podcasts that focus on, millennial topics, diversity topics, and entrepreneurship topics. So I've been going around pitching to distribution partners, working on pilots and recording those, coming up with storylines and crafting that. So that naturally leads to many sleepless nights. And I've also been working on the pitch deck on my end to craft it like, Shark Tank style, to make sure if I go to an investor, I can say, this is the problem, this is what we're solving, this is why, I'm the person for this. So it's been a lot of sleepless nights, but it's not been a bad set of work. It's just led me to have a lot of impromptu naps. I think Carlos caught me this morning before our call. He just called me right after I woke up from a nap because that was the only time I could find some sleep. But yeah, I've been focusing on building that network of podcasts, and that's been my week. But what about you, Bhavani? You've had an interesting week.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yes. What happened? Yeah, I'm just like looking, going like, oh, it's Saturday. Yeah, it's been a whole week. It's been pretty good. I kind of get what you mean about speaking to investors or trying to prepare your pitch deck, because it's similar to what I've been doing, and it's also quite interesting. I don't know how you find it, to try to pitch something that isn't entirely focused on revenue generation. So,
right.
So that's been quite curious. I've been learning a lot, as well as meeting with a lot of people. So it's kind of just been like every day, just meeting people, trying to annoy people right before Christmas, and telling them, oh yes, I'll email you next week, and then them telling me, oh no, I'm not at work. I'm like, okay. But besides that, I think what Tayo is referring to was that I just got back from the hospital, which was a weird thing. I had to I was doing a Skype on like right before I had to leave, and then I was like, oh yeah, so I won't be able to speak to you tomorrow. And they're like, why not? I'm like, kind of need to go to the hospital. And they're like, really? Okay, you look so fine. I was like, that's the whole point of what I do, so we can get into that. But so got out of that, had a meeting this afternoon as well, where thankfully it was Skype, and I could I could just go like, like I am very professional indeed. Like, yeah, I haven't just gotten out of the hospital. So yeah, that's kind of been my week mostly.
Yeah. And we'll get into that early more in the interview, your story, because it's very unique, and I think it's one that it will inspire.
Well, it's
a
actually been a busy couple of weeks.
But, what about you,
between
Carlos?
Thanksgiving and the couple of weeks in between that, I flew back and forth to Florida from California a couple of times. So that in itself, just getting reacclimated to going from the east to west, that itself takes a toll on you. But from a business side, this is my favorite time of the year because it really gives you an opportunity to start looking ahead, to start putting the gears in motion. And while so many people, whether they work in the corporate world or they have their own businesses, like to take the holidays, to take off, to rest and relax, which don't get me wrong, I believe that is firmly important. But yet people completely disconnect, where I think this is the time of year where you should really be looking to what are you going to do for the first 3 months to ensure that you have a very successful new year ahead. So one of my goals is to speak at more conferences next year. And announcement here, this week I was invited to speak at South by Southwest, which for me, it's been a dream of mine to speak at South by since as long as I can remember. And, officially I'll be speaking there in March. I will be speaking on personal branding and leveraging social media in your job search and in your career. So really thankful for the opportunity and just excited to share all of that with you guys once March rolls around.
Cool. That sounds amazing.
All right. And also, this guy, he's being modest. He's also got invited to speak at social media today. So he's got a big year ahead of him in terms of speaking engagement. So that would be, that's what we're looking for. I think in hustle culture, we like to talk about the balance between hustle and work, but a lot of times, holidays is not a universal thing for us. You find the time when you can spend, but we also have to make sure.
I was just going to say, time's our greatest asset.
But with that being,
so we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And I believe our success is greatly determined on how we leverage and utilize that time that we have. And, a lot of folks, they like to disconnect. Any Star Wars fans in the house, a lot of people have been going to the movies this past week, getting all excited about that hype. And, Tyler can attest to it. Bhavani, I'm sure you can as well. When you're constantly grinding, your mind is always churning. And, there's really that disconnect. While it's important, it's also equally important that you're constantly thinking about how am I going to continue to produce? Because the second that you slow down, that's when someone else is going to be going after that spot that you're aiming for. So.
Okay. And speaking of grinding, there's no better personification of that than our lovely guest today, Bhavani Esapathi. So I'm going to give you the floor, Bhavani. Why don't you tell us your story? Tell us about yourself and how you got to develop such a
wasn't that the whole hour last time when we did?
It was, but new audience, new show.
Yeah. Cool. So do you just want me to go straight into Chronically Driven, or?
No, I would love to hear more about the background, the story about because the chronicle illness and how you change your perspective.
I suppose people talk a lot about so what should I do for the rest of my life, or like. What job should I take? Where should I live? Blah, 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 all of these things. And, I went through the same thing, and I still think we all do. Once wrote an article that was about not having a purpose, because I think our purpose is always changing. And once you recognize that, it's easier to feel more grounded. But one of the things that's been quite constant for me is that I've always been very ill. I've not been, the healthy person who gets to go out, who does a lot of different things and blah, blah, blah. So, so that's something that has been probably the most constant thing, as horrible as it may sound. And I realized that a lot of people kept telling me about how they feel sorry for me, or how they think, that's terrible, and so on. However, because that's all I have ever known, I never thought about what it would be not to have these limitations, or what I could do if I didn't have them. Because in my head, these were the reasons I was able to do the kind of things I did. And that's kind of where the inspiration for Chronically Driven came from. Last year when it launched, when I had to give up a job that I liked, as well as was a pretty big deal for me at the time. And then that's simply because I couldn't work within the system of, the 9 to 5. And as well as it wasn't just the job. I mean, that was effectively the first job I've ever had. So I've never actually had a quote unquote a proper job. And I was like, that might be cool. But when my doctor said, oh, like, if you continue working, you're going to die. Like, literally, there is no other way you can do this. So
why did the doctor say that?
Well,
why did the doctor say you die? Like, you overwork yourself or something?
Quite. I was really pleased to speak about here, where you talk about hustle culture, is that for someone with a chronic condition, a chronic incurable condition, even working 9 to 5 sat at a desk is far too much. But having said that, that doesn't mean you can't hustle. There are different ways that you can go about it. But legally and medically, doctors are advised to tell you not to work because in a worldwide view, the idea of hustle is to work nonstop, is to work yourself to the bone. So that's kind of why I was told that. But to me, hustle means a whole different thing, which we can get into. But the Chronically Driven essentially grew out of that, where I wanted to share stories about people who have various different limitations. And essentially it was about having conditions that are chronic, incurable, and that are invisible effectively. Because one of the reasons I wasn't able to get any support was because my employers or anyone else essentially said, oh, well, you aren't covered in equality laws, you aren't covered in disability laws, so there's like we're not legally obliged to support you in any way. So the stories essentially are an attempt at changing the narrative of having a disability from, despite of whatever, having these things, you still do this, to because of what are the things that you can do when you're unable to do the things that everyone else can.
Bhavani, so for those that are watching here on Blab or listening to us on the podcast on iTunes, you talked about your cause, which is Chronically Driven, which you are essentially putting a face and a voice behind critical illness. So what exactly is critical illness and how has it affected you specifically?
Oh, yeah, sure. We kind of define the idea of invisible conditions, which are all, medically speaking, your autoimmune conditions, which are about 80 to 100 different types, depending on which organization you look at, because they classify them separately. And they are incurable, and they're invisible, and they're chronic, which means that they take effect every single day, and you're unable to live everyday normal life as everyone else does. And specifically to me, I've got Crohn's disease that where I only have a very small portion of my intestine left, as well as I've got a kind of an inflammation that affects my spine because as a result of Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune inflammatory condition, as well as I'm an asthmatic where I had to get one of my lungs removed when I was like 16. So which kind of makes it, I see Tayo shaking his head. So it's a whole combination of those things that don't allow me to, sit at a desk for like 9 to 5 or be in an office at 9 a.m. or do other things that most people take for granted.
Wow. So through your website, Chronically Driven, through the community that you've established, tell us about some of the stories of the members of the community and how exactly are the masses getting behind these folks in need?
Yeah, I think one of the primary principles that I was very, very certain of is not to merely spread awareness, or not, because if you look at most of these support groups, you can look at, the Crohn's and colitis group, you can look at MS, you can look at anyone, but most of them want you to feel sorry, feel sad for them, or they kind of try to play the pity card, which is fine if it works for you, and most of them want to raise money for research. So it's about doing something good for the future, and there is literally no one, even now, trying to make people's lives better now. Like right now, what are you going to do about it? So you can raise a lot of money, you can make someone feel sorry for you because you have a terrible life. So the story is essentially the editorial process is to get stories that talk about before, how they were before, and what they went through, and what are some of the things that enable them to redesign their life in a way that allows them to still do the things that they love to do, instead of give up everything and stay at home. There are some amazing stories. There's actually I should let you know, there's an artist from LA who wrote about him becoming an artist once he's diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he makes augmented reality works that look at what it's like on your insides. And there's quite a few of them. We have a big audience in America, incidentally. So so that's quite nice to know that we're able to have that on the other side of the world. And there are loads of other stories about a woman supporting her husband who's going through MS, and kind of what she had to do to actually make him feel normal and make him feel like he's able to do everything. As well as there are other stories of another woman who has Lyme disease, and who was who used to run marathons, and then you have Lyme disease, and suddenly you feel like an old woman who's not able to do anything. So that's a big mental shift to get over. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, I used to run marathons and now I can't do anything, and just resign from life. But then what did it take for her to rethink and reframe her mind to be able to still do things that she enjoys? She's a wonderful writer. Sports was one aspect of her, but what else could she do now as well? So so all the stories in the end look at what you're capable of doing now because of your condition. Because when something is chronic and incurable, there's no point asking someone to fight it every step of the way. Rather, try to look at how you can incorporate it and live a better life.
Bhavani, when we first talked, and I remember telling you specifically, I mean, we connected on the fact that we're both international, but I remember saying, I love the fact that you lived a no excuse life. And there was no, the way you've grown up, you've literally had every single thing against you say you shouldn't do this, but you always fought tradition and you sought to make a difference. And since we last talked, and as told by Nomads, the other podcast I host, something exciting has happened to you. So I saw that you received funding from the Arts Council of England, Innovate UK, to pilot a series of social programs. Now, can you tell us what that is and why that's exciting?
Yeah, they've done something interesting where they're looking at social innovation, either done it from a cultural perspective or from a tech perspective. So we're trying to, my idea is, because I work in the arts, I work with museums and galleries and so on. So the idea is to have an exhibition that looks at invisible disabilities. And I actually have something interesting for you. I believe this is the first time I'm actually saying this in a podcast. So yay!
Exclusive!
I know, right? We need to do something to sound effects for the podcast. Like a drum roll of some kind. So we're gonna be launching this campaign that is with the hashtag Visible Me, where we're asking people to share about their invisible symptoms and conditions of the day that people can't see. So in an attempt at making it more visible, because one of the things we did encounter with the stories were that we've got a lot of people in our Facebook group, but not all of them are able to contribute stories yet, even though they have inspiring things to share. So the idea is hopefully with Visible Me, we're able to actually mobilize a wider global audience and make everyone feel a part of it instead of just the ones who have, written a 1,000-word story.
Gotcha. Now, the hashtag Visible Me, is that also the same thing with Invisible Labs, or is that...
good thing you brought that up. Sorry, there's just so many things going on. With the funding is what we've established the Invisible Labs, which is going to be, so part of it is going to become chronically driven. The other part is having this campaign and looking at the people from different parts of the world and seeing what are their pain points and what we can do about it, as well as another aspect where we're looking into invisible health data and how we're able to respond to it. Because one of the big elements is that every time I spoke to anyone, any policymakers, anyone who could do something about it, they immediately said, "Oh, Lena, that's awesome. Love your stories. But can you give us some numbers to work with? Can you give us some data to go around with?" So the funding is essentially Invisible Labs is going to enable us to do that, to collate this information so that we're able to actually show these people. Well, that is I think last time I checked, it was in 2014. It was over 500 million Americans. Am I getting that right? Something like that. And then 1 in 2 people in the UK have an autoimmune condition. So that's 50% of your population. But people still think, this is a very small issue and we don't need to be concerned about it right now, and so on. So that's kind of where how it's being situated right now, with Chronically Driven becoming a part of the Invisible Labs.
I love that you're taking it global, because a lot of these things we take for granted. We're in the political climate here in the U.S., and you see it, a lot of issues and interest groups come up, and you start to hear some of the things that are so underrepresented, and a lot of that is one of them is is chronic illness or disabilities, and it's because people don't have that information. I mean, what your program is doing is that it's making data aware, is raising enough information about it. It's bringing up the data and the stats. And you said you raised them. Is it 500 million people? You said that was a staggering number.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
of
in America, yeah.
That's incredible.
America alone.
Because
that's America alone. Yeah. Because
the reason I'm saying it's incredible is that's why it's an Invisible Me. No one really knows what someone's going on. And like you said, your business friends yesterday were saying you look so good.
Yeah.
But they had no idea that you had to go to the hospital. And I think it's great that you're doing this. So if it's called hashtag Visible Me, right?
Yeah, if you know anyone with an invisible condition, so just tweet it out, Instagram it, Visible Me. Tell us what you're going through on the day. So it just helps people to understand you can look amazing, but you can still feel awful inside.
So that was my next question, is for those of us that don't necessarily struggle with a chronic illness, but yet we want to get behind your cause, we want to support you, and most importantly, we want to show you guys love. How can we go ahead and do that?
Yeah, brilliant question. I would you don't necessarily have to have something. If you if you wanted to use the hashtag to talk about it, want to know more about it, that would be awesome too, because the hashtag is essentially to be able to bring together people who are interested in it, as well as I believe the website should be live later today or tomorrow, but if you just go to theinvisiblelabs.com, so you'll be able to get up onto a list, so you will know all the new programs and things that are going to be coming up. And even just telling people will be great. When I first started it, I had like a donate button, although the whole point, I was like, I don't really care if you give me money, but I was like, the best thing you can do is to tell someone about it. But if you don't want to, then you can give us money. So yeah, the best thing you can do is, share the project with people.
Go for it. I know Carlos has got another follow-up question.
Yeah, so one of the things that you said before, Bhavani, was, for your community, you really reinforce it to them that you do what you are capable of doing now. And I dropped it here in the comments because, that really stood out with me. And so many times people complain about the silliest things. They complain that, about someone unfriending them on Facebook, or someone cut them off in traffic, or someone was rude to them at work, but they don't focus on, the bigger picture and how fortunate they are that they're not necessarily, I don't want to say struggling, but they're not fighting a battle like what you or your community battles with. So for any entrepreneur out there, anyone listening, what 3 tips can you share to inspire people to do what they want to do today with the opportunity that they've been given?
I do think we often don't realize what you're capable of because you're so busy complaining about the things, like, oh, someone overtook me on the highway, or oh, someone got the last burger I was going to buy, or whatever, like anything ridiculous you can come up with. But in terms of generally, I'd probably say there are like 3 things that have particularly worked well for me in the past, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot more in the future. But for now, it's not. I know it might sound counterintuitive, but it's not listening to someone when they say, oh, you can't do that. I mean, there are people who say, oh, I want to do this. They say, oh, but that's not possible. Like, that's ridiculous. But at one point, it wasn't possible for someone from 3 different cities across the country to be able to speak live and look at their faces. But that's what we're doing now. So if you do have an idea, and if someone's telling you it's not possible, then don't listen to the ones who haven't defied the odds themselves. Because just because someone, if you think you can't do it, you feel like you need to tell someone else, oh, you can't do it, that's not possible. Right. But then if you listen to that, you're never going to be able to get to do anything. The second one, which was probably the hardest for me to overcome, was stop doing things for the money. And when you do things that you are great at, then people will want to pay you for it, which is crazy. It was crazy even for me when I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, but I don't know how I'm going to internalize it. But you were always going to be mediocre at the things that you're doing just for the money, if you know what I mean. And the very last thing, which I would probably say is the most important thing, is to stop following your passion. And I know it sounds crazy, but to me, you can be, I'm passionate about coffee. I'm a real coffee snob. Like, I'm definitely passionate about coffee. I'm passionate about.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. I mean, I'm passionate about anything else, like good stationery. But I think if you're going to work, if you're going to dedicate your life to something, do it for the things that you're obsessed about. Because you can be like, I could open a coffee shop, but I'm pretty sure it's going to fail. Like, I'm not going to be there at 5 a.m. doing the machines.
Right.
So I think it's knowing what you're passionate about and do it as a hobby, and actually doing something that you need to do rather than, oh, I like doing it. So find out what is the one thing that you're obsessed about that you're never going to be able to let go. And that, to me, has made the biggest difference.
That's very interesting perspective, because the word passionate, I say passionate all the time, and I think I get what you're saying when you say passionate and obsessed. But like for me, I love sports. I always wanted to be an athlete growing up. I started with soccer, then tennis, then basketball, and I got to college and I saw everybody was 6'6" and they had better handles than me and they could shoot it. I was like, I'm going back to just watching this game. But I still play and practice the sports. But but that's something I was really passionate about. What I'm obsessed about is telling stories, right? Telling stories, making a difference, making an impact, and being a voice for the millennial generation. So I think that's a very good point to make. I mean, some people can say they're passionate about it, but I think it's interesting if you have that intersection with passion and obsession, because then you have something that keeps you up at night. And that's, for example, I was up 4 and waking up at 7 for 4 consecutive days. And that was the reason why, because I was working on the 7th ends. One thing I didn't know about you, Bhavani, is that you love digital media. You love social media. You've built a career out of that. And not many people know about it. A lot of people, they come to your side, they know that you're this voice for chronically ill people, but you... I remember a conversation we had where we were arguing whether Facebook actually merged with Skype at one point.
Yeah.
But you stay.
You were right.
You stay up to. I was right. You see, I was right. But you stay up to date on the tech news and digital media. Why do you think? Why is that something that you are, I guess, to use your word, obsessed with?
Looking back retrospectively, it's because technology allows you to connect with people. And it's being able to do something that's almost impossible. That's like, it should be impossible for me to speak to someone in New York and LA right now, but I am. So I think the obsession with technology comes from seeing that it's capable of doing things that are right now impossible, and also having that, and for the very reason that to enable that to be able to do the impossible, it's powered by humans. It's powered by curiosity, and I think that's what makes it interesting. So I don't quite buy into the argument about technology is the opposite of everything that's nature or whatever. But and I don't think it's what alienates us. It only magnifies who you really are. So if you are someone who doesn't like people, you are going to stare at your phone and not talk to anyone. But if you are someone who loves meeting new people, you're going to try find what new groups can I get into, or who can I connect with.
All right. I love what you're saying, and Carlos will go on with this, but his favorite platform is Snapchat.
I'm a big Snapchat.
That's his favorite thing. What is your favorite platform?
Oh, wow. My favorite. You know what? I know it's really crazy, but I think I literally owe my entire career to Twitter. Like, I need to find Evan Williams and take him out for dinner or something, because I find work there. I meet new collaborators there. I even the funding that we received and who I'm working with right now for Chronically Driven, I found that out through Twitter. So that, hands down, it has to be that.
Yeah, Twitter is a great platform. Twitter is what's unique about it is that it's open source, right? So you can find pretty much anyone out there who's talking about any topic that's of interest to you, and you can just engage. You can send them a tweet. There's nothing really stopping you. There's not that barrier there where you have to connect or you have to go through the formality, and you can just send a message and get on someone's radar. So for me, though, it's always been about LinkedIn. So for me personally, yeah. So LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I got on. That was the first social network that I got on back in 2008, and that really helped me build a business network which previously didn't exist. I didn't have access to business professionals online. Again, we're talking about joining LinkedIn in 2008 when it was still very much at the ground level, and it was from LinkedIn where that core network then expanded into Twitter. So the people that I was connecting with on LinkedIn, I wanted to follow them on Twitter. And then the people that I started to build really close and tight-knit relationships with carried over to Facebook. So then I was leveraging, and I still do this today, granted now there's Snapchat, there's Instagram, there's other networks, but still at its core, having that multi-channel strategy or multi-channel approach has been the key for me. It's, use LinkedIn as that business directory, actually engage on Twitter, but then get to know people on a more human level through Facebook.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I completely get it. You can't friend someone you never talk to, but if you talk to them on Twitter, they somehow go, oh, maybe this person's cool. like I'll friend this person for a little bit and see how it goes.
Yeah, you know, Facebook actually is a hidden gem when it comes to social media
Groups?
for business purposes.
Yeah.
Not only Facebook groups, but just the fact that you can get to know someone on a personal level, which again, LinkedIn, while it's great for breaking the ice and actually getting to see what companies certain people work for, identifying decision makers, all that's great. But Facebook is where I believe you actually get to know people on a more human level, which at the end of the day, let's face it, we want to get to know the people that we're going to potentially be doing business with, because you tend to do business with those that you feel comfortable doing business with. So staying on this topic of social media, what do you feel are the most important platforms for entrepreneurs to be on?
Right now, to me, I think you need to be on where the attention is, because if you could be someone who has like millions of followers already or none, but if you aren't where people are looking at, where people's eyes are right now, then you're going to just as quickly fade away. So
very true.
I'd probably say Instagram's on top of my list. Probably by the end of 2016, it might not be, given that they've just taken on ads. Or I might even give it 6 months. You never know. The reason it was so amazing was that because they didn't have brands taking over it. But also Blab, because like when else could you randomly have a face-to-face chat with someone you only admired, or someone you used to tweet at, but then they never replied because they probably get hundreds of tweets. But then when you're online at the same time and you can look at them and talk to them, that I think that's pretty powerful. As well as I think with Facebook, I value it a lot for the advantage of groups, which really helps, even if you don't have everyone on your friend list. I think that coupled with meetup groups, because that almost works like social media in itself, where you can find interesting people, and they could be on the other side of the world, then you just get to know them, or if they're closer to where you are, then you can build a relationship much more easily.
Right. It's interesting. This Carlos was doing a poll about trends for 2016, and I said, I think live streaming, whoever can figure that out, is probably going to be the most successful platform. And because you got Facebook Live, you got Periscope, you got Meerkat, you got Blab, and then go ahead.
No, I was going to say, have you discovered Casey Neistat Beam yet?
Yes.
No. Okay, I guess
I'm not a big fan walking around with my cell phone like this up to my face. I will just.
You know what? I think it's kind of ahead of the time. That's what we need once kind of like VR processes take on. Because I mean, the technology behind it is amazing. The fact that you can't choreograph like your best selfie in the world, or that you can't like add all the filters in the world to make yourself look pretty or whatever. So I think that's amazing. It's just the fact that he's bound by the iPhone right now might be the only limitation. I don't know. Maybe she's able to put that into the iWatch, maybe in some weird way.
Pretty much the way that Beam works, Tayo, and Bhavani hit the nail on the head. It's the anti-selfie social network. So right out of the gate, I don't think that you'd be very interested in it. but anyways, here's the way it works. So there's a sensor on your iPhone. This little sensor right here picks up, you put it either on your chest or you put it like up to your head, and then it activates the camera on the front of your phone to go ahead and show people micro moments, if you will, or a few seconds at a time, what is going on in your world. So some people call it Beam. I call it Be-Me. So it's like first person point of view type social network. I totally get the concept. The interface I feel is a little janky. And if you really want to reel people in with cool technology, I think the user experience is extremely important, and it really has to be friendly. So I jumped on there for about 72 hours and then just jumped right off. I was like, wow, this is too complicated. And I tell you, the platform, not for nothing, the platform that really, in my books, has taken off this year is Snapchat. And the facial recognition technology of the filters, I feel that is the future of social advertising. it's incorporating the end user into an experience, into an ad. And if Facebook and Twitter and these guys can crack that nut, then I think that they definitely have something on their hands.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because
No, sorry, I was going to say, and that is why Carlos is speaking to social media today. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think like we've come to like the end of ads, and if you really want to market your product or service, it needs to be built into an experiential mode or a content kind of a way, and not just like, hey, buy this, you know, this is amazing, it's $9.99 or whatever.
Yeah. Now, Gerald asked, what about Cyberdust? And I was one of the early adopters of Cyberdust. So, I mean, you know, I don't have anything. I love Mark Cuban, you know, first of all. And I see Cindy Millets here. She was one of my early friends on Cyberdust. I mean, I know, you know, I just, for some reason, I couldn't stay on as much as I wanted to, but I haven't gone back. I have to check it on. I think it's interesting. I think I think it's still slightly ahead of its time, is what I would say. But maybe I'm wrong. Cindy's on here. I know she's a big Cyberduster, so she might disagree with me. But I think the way Cyberdust works is that you can send pictures and do anything, and it goes instantly. You know, it goes away. And the difference with Snapchat is that they say it's not on a server. You know, so
see,
it's, you know.
I like Mark Cuban, but I do think when it comes to privacy, he hasn't moved beyond the 90s. Like, I might get a bunch of hate mail from everyone who's like, why am I saying this? But no, just in the sense that, I mean, we're in an age where you do need to redefine what privacy means. You can't stick to the understanding of privacy from the 1950s and try to put it into this world, because it just doesn't work. And even if you like go back to like insane time, like if you go back to like old Greek philosophy, there's Plato talking about how there is like privacy is an illusion, and that there is no difference between public and private spaces. And it's so insane how that makes more sense now.
Yeah.
Rather than,
I was gonna say, I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, my philosophy is this: there should be no expectation of privacy if you're gonna be engaging on public networks. And Cyberdust, Snapchat, at the end of the day, they are still public networks because someone somewhere has access to the data that you are transmitting on there. So if you do not want information about you to get out, just don't engage on the platforms.
Yeah, no. So speaking of privacy and people, you know, we talked about the benefit of Blab giving you the chance to talk to people that you only dreamed about. My three biggest role models are, in no particular order, Oprah Winfrey, the late Nelson Mandela, and Seth Godin. So which three people inspire you the most?
Seth Godin is definitely, I don't know if they're in any order specifically.
Yeah,
you know what? There are a lot. There are quite a few of them, and I don't think I'll be doing justice. But Seth Godin, definitely, I do want to hopefully meet him at some point. Gary Vaynerchuk is on the list somewhere.
Yes,
you and Carlos. You and Carlos.
Now that I have a pass South by, it's like I am going to make sure that I take a selfie with Gary Vaynerchuk.
And you need to send that to me.
Yes.
So, you should. So Gary V for you, Seth Godin, and I know you've got a list of other people, but yeah. No,
interesting. I like when our guests name drop.
Look, I love Gary V as well, but you guys, I think I never met a harder fan of Gary V than Carlos, and I think maybe Bhavani now, maybe you might be.
Tayo, it seems like every guest,
you know, I love
about every guest that comes on to Hustle Culture is a fan of Gary V. I'm gonna start calling him. I'm gonna start calling Gary V the Godfather of Hustle.
You know what? But the thing with that with Gary V is you guys, both of you were talking about the privacy thing. Blows that out of the water. You know, he's as transparent as there is.
He still doesn't share anything about his family.
Right.
So
it's very true.
True. But he started to do that with Daily V, right? Isn't starting to do that with the Daily V?
No, not his family. That bit is still blacked out.
Okay. So he redefined his definition of privacy then, in a sense. But yeah, no, I think that's cool. I usually I like to ask that question because I always want to see where our guests get inspiration from, and the running theme with the people you mentioned are people that are not afraid to go against tradition, which is something that I share with you and Carlos. It's just going against the norm and living your own truth, speaking your own truth, and not being afraid to do that. So I definitely appreciate you saying that. We're almost at a stop here, but Carlos, yesterday was Friday. It's usually Shark Tank. And it's one of my favorite shows. We just talked about Mark Cuban, but
please don't send
if
me
I gave you
now.
a chance to pitch, no, they won't. I usually, if you had a chance to pitch, to us in Shark Tank, what would be your 30-second pitch be about Chronically Driven?
Wow. Probably not even 30 seconds. I'd say if you want to discover what it's like to go beyond the extraordinary, come join us.
And where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I'm on the website that's going to go up is I don't know if it's live yet or not. It's the invisiblelabs.com. But if you can go to my website, that's bhaesa.com, and Chronically Driven right now is a page there, so you will be able to see everything until the other one goes live. And yeah, Twitter, as I mentioned, love it. So on the Twitters, as I found out some people say,
Twitters,
BHAESA as well.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right.
Bhavani, thank you so much for joining us here on Hustle Culture. We have one final segment before we wrap up the show, and that is around the Hustler Spotlight of the Week. So this is where Tayo and I and our guests each talk about someone that we want to give a shout out to who's just doing amazing things, inspirational, motivating, and hustling. So we're going to start with you as our guest. We're going to put you here on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Who would be your hustler spotlight of the week?
Oh, wow. You know what? I am actually going to go out I was just on a call with this girl who's with this inspiring woman who's in America, who told me she's studying to be a doctor, as well as she runs her own nonprofit for disabled students to help them get scholarships, and she has a disability of her own, and she was just going, wow, what you do is amazing. And I was like, are you kidding? You're amazing. So considering everything she's been doing, and the fact that she's going to be working through Christmas similar to myself, and I'm pretty sure that Christmas is pretty big where she is. So yeah, probably have to pick her.
Excellent. Very cool.
Okay. Carlos, I don't know if you're going to try and buy time,
I think that's what he's
because I'm
doing.
trying to think of something. But I think you know what, Bhavani, you got it. I think that's what he's doing. But I'm just going to go because I have to think real quick on the spot because I always forget about this every week. I think my hustle spotlights are going to have to be to podcasters. So, because we've had several waves, several booms. It's been like blogging. There was the blogging boom, and then it went down the podcast boom. But for those podcasts that have stuck through and stayed, I think they're now starting to benefit from this being an interesting digital medium that's a little different from video and others, because it goes with you when you can't use visual elements. So whether you're working out, cooking, and stuff like that. So people that have stuck through that, I think a lot of people are starting to see the benefits of that. So I would say shout out to fellow podcasters. You, Carlos, you got 2 podcast shows yourself, and a few other people that are out there. Who specifically
the podcast game stands out for you? Come on, it's a hustler spotlight.
I mean, there are quite a number.
There's got to be at least one person.
Dog! Okay, fine. Seriously, man, you gonna do this to me? Fine. I love Tim Ferriss. I love John Lee Dumas. I love Lewis Howes. I'm giving all the shout outs. There's a guy called Carlos Gil. He does 2 shows. Yeah, those are the people. Are you happy now? but
I want to give a shout
mine.
out to every Star Wars fan that camped out for tickets and to see their movie. Yes, I personally, in full disclosure,
that is terrible.
And full disclosure, I am not a Star Wars fan.
Thank you.
But I gotta say, and I'm sorry, that is not my Hustler Spotlight of the week. I just want to say shout out. In full disclosure, I said I want to give a shout out.
Okay, shout out. But I'm still behind you though.
But no, Hustler Spotlight of the week for me. He was actually on our show a few weeks ago. His name is Keenan, and he just dropped his book called Not Taught. So make sure you go out, visit nottaught.com, get a copy of the book, listen to Keenan when he was on our podcast a few weeks ago. Dude brought the energy, and he was on fire for just an hour straight. And actually, we stayed on. We talked to Keenan for about an hour after the show. And I wish that we could have.
Nice.
I wish that we could have recorded that and just kept recording, because it would have been like part 2 of just awesomeness. But Keenan is my Hustler Spotlight of the week.
Cool.
Hey, no, good guy. And make sure you check out the episode. I believe it was 2 episodes back. But I've gotten to know Keenan. He's great, and he's also a fellow Patriots fan. So. I'm a big fan. But yes, that concludes the episode. And thank you, Bhavani, for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We hope to continue to spread your word and spread your mission. I think it's admirable, and I think it's one that needs to be out there. I usually say, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are listening, whatever you're doing, remember to use your difference to make a difference.
That is real talk.
That's it.
Cool.
Until next week.